Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 834. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Today, the SPaMCAST 834 features our essay titled Battling the Walls of Denial. The essay begins, one of the problems change agents face is promoting change when individuals, teams, and even organizations fail to recognize how their behavior hurts them and therefore don't see the need for change. In these circumstances, you often hear fatalistic rationalizations such as, "This is just how we've always done it," or the equally problematic, "You don't understand, we're special." Just running away is not the only option. We also have a visit from John M. Quigley, who brings his alpha and omega of product development to the podcast. Before we dive into the essay, remember, master work intake. Mastering Work Intake by Jeremy Willets and myself is your path to addressing IT's nasty, dirty little secret, poor work intake. Simply put, if you don't control work intake, it controls you. Buy a copy and begin to control the flow of work for your team and your organization. Link in the show notes to buy a copy of Mastering Work Intake. Once you get it, take a read, reach out to Jeremy or myself. We'll be happy to have a conversation. Battling the walls of denial. One of the problems change agents face is promoting change when individuals, teams, and even organizations fail to recognize how their behavior hurts them and therefore don't see the need for change. In these circumstances, you often hear fatalistic rationalizations. "This is just how we always do it," or the equally problematic, "We are special. You don't understand." As Jeremy Willets and I have recognized, even though work intake is a serious issue that can cripple organizations, teams, and people have built solid walls of fatalism and rationalizations to reduce the inner conflict their behavior generates. As noted during our reread of How to Be a Stoic, most people hate conflict. To rectify the conflict, they seek explanations to push an idea or judgment over the equal hump. This means that rational arguments and promises of greater value almost always fall on deaf ears. Unfortunately, this is the tactic change agents typically deploy. It's ineffective. To effect change, a leader needs to change the playing field. Increasing cognitive dissonance is a valuable tool. Increasing cognitive dissonance generates conflict between judgments that a person holds. For example, I need to please my boss, even though they're piling too much work on my plate. I've heard this example used to rationalize creating technical debt to get through a backlog. One person once told me that technical debt must be okay because we have a word for it. I pointed out that we had a word for murder, and that did not make it all right. I got a "you are so stupid" stare, so stop my verbal sparring. They had told themselves stories that helped them sleep at night and were willing to defend that position even though harmful to themselves and to their organization. As a change agent, in this common scenario, a laissez-faire approach to facilitating change will fail more often than it succeeds. A more manipulative approach, I know, needs to be considered. In its simplest form, at a team level, the pattern is isolate the team, just like you were doing a dojo. Generate cognitive dissonance. Introduce new information the team can use to reduce cognitive dissonance. Coach them through using the new knowledge. Release the team back into the wild. This approach feels heavy-handed and manipulative. While discussing the topic, a colleague asked if I had been reading books by Frederick Taylor and Jack Walsh. Histrionics aside, as I reread Jess Brock's The Dojo Coach's Pocket Guide, I don't see the substantial difference in approaches. Direct and controlled, yes. Negatively manipulative? No, I don't think so. Generating cognitive dissonance is the part of the equation people have the most difficulty with. As a change agent or a coach, it's easy to help when a team recognizes they're on a burning platform. They have pain and want to get rid of that pain. This is a classic burning platform scenario that most every class on change teaches. In real life, recognition is often the real barrier to change. As we have noted, when people have rationalized their position, logical arguments aren't effective in these cases. Generating cognitive bias can be useful. The idea is to create a state of mental discomfort that motivates individuals to resolve inconsistencies between their beliefs, attitudes, or behaviors. Approaches for generating dissonance include awareness of inconsistencies, highlighting discrepancies between current beliefs and new information or behaviors makes individuals more aware of contradictions. 2. Encouraging reflection. Increased cognitive dissonance can lead individuals to reflect more deeply on their beliefs and the rationalizations that support them. 3. Motivating change. When faced with dissonance, individuals may feel compelled to minimize discomfort by aligning their beliefs with their actions or accepting new ideas. 4. Reinforcing new information. By introducing information that conflicts with existing beliefs, cognitive dissonance can encourage individuals to reassess and potentially adopt the new standard, a new standpoint to remove the dissonance. 5. Empathy development. Engaging individuals in discussions that challenge their views can enhance empathy and understanding by pushing them to consider alternative perspectives, potentially leading to new attitudes, changing attitudes over time. 6. Behavioral change. When dissonance arises due to behaviors that clash with beliefs, such as someone who values the work-life balance but doesn't want to say no to new work. Good example, eh? The discomfort may motivate them to change their behavior or beliefs to restore consistency. In using these techniques that generate cognitive dissonance need to closely be facilitated. Events such as retrospectives, retreats, and dojos provide isolation and control to ensure team members who become defensive are channeled in the right direction. Or worse, don't end up strengthening existing beliefs. The goal is to facilitate an environment where individuals feel comfortable exploring and possibly reconsidering their views based on new information without feeling attacked. Jeremy Willets and I have penned 20 questions that can be used to help generate cognitive dissonance in the area of work intake. We will publish the questions in the Work Intake LinkedIn group. Link in the show notes. Go over and join. To jump the queue and to get all 20 questions, join our Maven Work Intake class mailing list, and I'll send you a copy. John M. Quigley, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Tom, I don't know how long we've been doing this. It's been for a little while now, but I so get a kick out of all these. It's been pretty fun.
It has been a few years. 7 is that? Does that ring a bell? Maybe.
Oh, 7. Yeah, probably about right. That's probably right.
Someday, I'm actually going to have to figure it out. But
yeah.
John,
and someday we're going to have to actually meet and have maybe a.
I got closer this time. I got closer this time on this last run. I just wasn't going to go anywhere near the Appalachians in between North Carolina and Tennessee this trip until it dries out a bit. And people, I mean, like I-40 got washed out. That was an interstate getting washed out. That's pretty incredible.
Here's the sad part. That interstate is relatively new. It was not, they've been working on that for decades, and it finally had, that part of it was finally, 4 lanes.
Whoop, get to fix it now. Yeah. Agreed. Interstate are, just if for no other reason than moving material around is the lifeblood of the United States. I mean, I guess you can start rail traffic, or put more in rail traffic, but that's pretty strapped as it is too.
Yeah.
And flying it makes it real expensive.
Exactly.
John, let's say we're in that I-40, and we've got problems in logistics and distribution and all sorts of things. And you're the new kid on the block. You've been out of school for a year. You've been in the job for a year. And the people around you are, like you and me, graybeards, and think they know everything because that's the way it's been done forever there. How do you have the conversation when you see something different going on?
That's an interesting toss across the plate there, Tom. Well, I sometimes have these young engineers give me a call about, first of all, a couple of things. Number one, there's an intermediate space when you think you know everything. Once you're a graybeard, a lot of times you realize a lot of things you thought were true turned out not to be true. So
damn right.
I would like to think that most of the graybeards are going,
don't brand me with that brand.
Yeah. But there's that middle space where you're fairly certain because you had a lot of successes, maybe, and you're typically on the side of the right decision, that you're pretty certain of the things you're saying. And then that's sometimes not the case. It's not true.
Okay.
Valid. So here's the thing. When you're the new kid on the block, I'm not so sure if you're all that comfortable or confident with asserting what you know or what you think you know when you're around, I'm going to call them your peers when you may have the illusion that they're your seniors in some way, because more time doing the work, you might think they might have acquired more knowledge about the work or how to do the work at this particular place, which kind of puts you a little bit at a deficit, maybe, or at least a perceived deficit. That's the key right there, I think. How to not be stuck on an ego and hubris and things like that, thinking you know it all, but also having the confidence that what you see and what you're able to envision how things are going to roll out in this event are actually, very probable versus the things that your peers are telling you when you don't have the experience that your peers have.
So what do you do?
That's a good question. I think you have to figure out how to balance. If you defer what you think while stating it, then at least at the end of the event, you can say things like, okay, I wasn't entirely wrong. When you do the post-mortem on the event, you can say, okay, this is what I did personally. I would say, who predicted this outcome based on this course of action we decided to take? And I would raise my hand as a way of saying, okay.
So isn't that like a lawyer who asks a question and answers it for the witness?
Yes. Yeah, because, in hindsight, it's easy to do after the fact to say that the course of action that was taken was not the right one, and that the other course of action might have been the correct course of action. But you don't know until you've actually done it, This is part of a persuasion strategy. When are you so certain in your position that you're going to try to persuade your colleagues and your peers or even your superiors that your course of action is the appropriate course of action.
Why persuade them when you can just trick them? But I think we can talk about manipulation and persuasion another day. But keep playing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because you either have to do that, you have to convince them, or you have to go it your own way if you can. A lot of times you can't because it's a team effort.
Yeah, what happens when somebody goes their own way in a team? What is that generally? Is there a name for that?
And that's not really a team then.
Well, no, it's not a team. And yeah.
On the other hand, this stuff is team sport and also individuals. You know, your wide receiver runs a particular route. The play is busted. He runs a route that's different. That's not scripted because of whatever reason. The quarterback finds him open and he throws the ball to him. He scores a touchdown. Was that a bad thing? I don't think so. That was probably an appropriate thing in hindsight.
Yeah, but up to a point when they recognize that context changed. And still, I think you're playing a team sport in that scenario. I think that's a little bit of a mixed metaphor, but
yeah, maybe.
But it's only mixed, right? So there are parts of that definitely are individual. But getting back to this, I'm the new kid on the block. I can see things differently. You're not the new kid on the block. You're trying to hold on to the past and the way it's always been done. How do you have that conversation? If you don't, I mean, let's face it, if you go off and run your own play as the new kid on the block, there is probably one answer for how that ends in the long run for you. And that's probably not good, right? In terms of trust and all sorts of team acumen. The project may work or a piece of work may work out fine, but I think I would worry about my tires getting slashed.
I don't know if let's play this out a little bit. Let's imagine that you and I are on this team, and this third junior engineer essentially has just saved our bacon. We thought it needed to do. We take this course of action. The third engineer took another course of action, and essentially made the project come. Or the outcome, the results we desired, in as much as we could hit them, were attained. Do we say to that engineer that we don't want to be a part of your team, or do you all of a sudden say, you know what, my judgment was not quite cool on this event? I did not have the right idea here. We did not have that right idea. Shouldn't we entertain that person's, maybe take it a little more credible next time?
I think it's a mixed bag. So having been influenced heavily by Stoics, I would say the wise thing to do would be to do the former, right? To recognize that individual. As somebody who is also a tad bit of a pragmatist, I would worry about the learned behavior that person just ran into. And I'm not sure that it wouldn't be, even if I recognized and listened to them and entertained their thoughts, I'm not 100% sure I would trust them very much for at least until they earn that trust back. Because whenever, in my estimation, whenever they felt they were right, they would think that they were empowered to go off on their own, therefore imperiling the team. I was the president of a large metrics organization, and I was leading a coalition of individuals that were trying to reshape the organization. Challenge the status quo versus the martinis and 18 bags for every trip kind of persons, right? Who really were stuck in an old version. And we had the votes to get a person into the vice presidency of the organization. We had it locked up, and one of the people that we were involved with decided to run an audible and switch his vote to the other camp for what he said was the good of the organization, and which then more firmly entrenched the other portion of the organization. We lost half of the membership, all sorts of things over time. It was a hot mess.
Yeah.
Even though I think the person acted because that's what they thought was right, there was no discussion, there was no transparency. Person still involved in the organization. Do I trust them? I might go out to dinner with them, but I wouldn't loan the keys to my car.
Yeah, I know. Once you've kind of, I usually say you have I treat like everybody I treat as if nothing bad's going to happen. But if you sting me once, then you kind of,
but
that's kind of closed off a little bit.
But isn't that? I agree. I think we're walking a fine line in terms of the new person just striking out and saving the day, and then expecting to be an equally trusted, maybe equally valued, but equally trusted part of the team. Because when things get messy, people are going to wonder if they're going to strike out on their own again.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Here's the other part of this. This is for me personally, I act as if my name is attached to the thing. If I feel like I'm being pushed into a decision that, or a course of action that's going to lead to a poor result, if you're making me do this, I don't want to have any part in cleaning this up, and I don't want my name attached to it. I don't want to deal with the depending actions if I'm coerced into doing a stupid thing or what I believe to be a stupid thing. On the other hand, I can't just say I'm not going to do the work of the organization because I think you're wanting us to do something that I think is going to produce poor results. There's a balance that you have to strike there for sure. But that loathe to do a thing twice,
yeah,
and that loathe to clean up a mess that I didn't create makes is a thing that puts this whole team thing in jeopardy, I think.
So do you have an example of how this worked out in real life, or how it is working out in real life? A hypothetical real example?
This junior engineer that called me because they after the fact, they're like, oh, this is what I think should happen. Well, we're not going to do that. We're going to do this. Well, here are the limits on this. Here's why this is not necessarily best. Oh, you still want to do it anyway? Okay, well, we'll do it. And then it becomes a mess, just like the junior engineer thought it would be. And so they're cleaning the mess up after hours. And they had to take a break. They gave me a call and they said, I needed to get some fresh air because I'm cleaning up a mess that I knew would be a mess because my peers did not like my solution. They wanted to do it this way. And they're learning from this is next time I'm not going to be doing it this way. I will not be doing what my peers suggest I do. I will not be deferring to them if their choice is not a good choice. I don't know what that leaves them, though, because just because you're not deferring doesn't mean you have a solution.
Right. And is it possible that in some points greater knowledge or more experience might actually be, point to the right solution, even though it's hard to explain and hard to get across?
Maybe. Maybe that's what they told me this was. They said this was a learning experience that their peers were not. They suggested that their peers were not necessarily in a better position engineering talent wise than they are, even if they had a decade of.
Well, that's distinctly possible too.
Yeah.
So it's assuming that the team learns from it. Is it that big a mess?
Well, I'm sure that they think it is because they're cleaning it up, and the people who suggested here's what the solution should look like as far as I know, weren't there cleaning it up. So
Well, that sucks. That's not teamwork either.
no.
Pardon the 4-letter word with a plural on it. Not a bad 4-letter word. So,
No.
John, do you always defer? Do you sometimes defer? Do you never defer?
It's a mixed bag. If I think your solution might be okay, if I think your solution's not, if you can't convince me your solution is better than an alternative approach, then no. And if I do defer and I do so grudgingly, I would be making sure you know that this was not what I preferred, and I will show you how the solution I chose would not have led to the outcome that happened. Of course, any number of other bad things could have happened if we took the other course of action. Who knows?
Yeah, it's a hard decision.
Yep.
And interpersonal skills are necessary to make that work, so that you don't have a rupture where the only answer is that somebody has to leave the team.
Yeah.
And that's not good either, because
I'm not sure engineers in general that work with things, especially engineers that are innately structured maybe are so great with the interpersonal skills. At least from experience, anecdotally, I'd say
I think that's been a self-selection thing. So I agree. I think there's a lot of our fellow engineers who are not good at the interpersonal stuff. But I suspect that to some extent, that's been sort of, since people tend to hire people that are similar to them, unless there's impetus for them to, broaden that wise. They tend to hire people who don't have interpersonal skills either. So I think that's maybe a self-selection problem.
It may be. Yeah.
John.
On the other hand, if you're predisposed to work with things and understand physical properties of stuff, then maybe if that's where you get your biggest joy, you're going to focus on that and maybe less on the trauma of dealing with other people.
The trauma. Interesting. Interesting choice of words there, Mr. Quigley.
What I meant to say was the joy.
John, how can people continue the conversation?
Well, you can follow me on LinkedIn, John M. Quigley. You can email me at johnmquigley@valuetransform.com. And I look forward to it.
John, until next month, thank you for providing your wisdom, your humor, your joy to the Software Process and Measurement Cast listeners.
Always a pleasure to be here, Tom.
In Reread Saturday News, Chapter 8 of Massimo Pigalucci's How to Buy a Stoke, buy a copy, read along, is titled A Very Crucial Word. In this chapter, the idea of the reification fallacy, also known as the fallacy of misplaced correctness, is addressed. In the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 835, we feature our conversation with Elizabeth Bieniek. Welcome. Elizabeth has a new book that just hit the stands this week on Tuesday. Cake on Tuesday, 25 Lessons to Unlock Corporate Innovation. It's going to be a great conversation about innovation and all of our roles in innovation. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?